Early 1970s. It wouldn't be before that.
No, so the whole lease land arrangement was like 1970, so it was during apartheid, and
Then it's continued.
then post-apartheid it was continued.
Continued, yeah.
But with some loss of organisation.
Yeah, of course.
Can you describe more what you mean by leased land? To whom was it leased? How is
To
it
the
set up?
traditional authority.
Okay.
But the lease is a trivial amount, like
How many years on the lease?
Depends.
Depends. Depending on the way the communities, now they set up trusts. So a number of people will agree to, a group of people will agree to take the land over, and that might be 40 families, and depending on the relationship that they have with each other, they will then agree to a lease from the department.
Okay.
So the department, the state still owns the land. And then we have got land that has been under traditional ownership for a long time, where you've got, villages established for hundreds or more years. Those were deep rural Transkei villages. But a lot of the challenge is this thing of what direction is the occupation of the land taking. So what we then decided to do was to look at the trends from the land cover change map. So South Africa has land cover data from 2000, when we were involved in mapping the land cover, to 2014. Those were the only really established land cover maps. That shows that the study we've done shows that there are a number of things happening. There's an increase in plantations and woody biomass with trees and shrubs and invading aliens. There's an increase in urbanization and rural habitation. So we're getting a large number of areas being occupied for housing purposes. Okay? There's been a decline, an unequivocal decline in the amount of cultivated land. So people are not, although everybody thinks they're going to cultivate lots of crops, people actually don't. It's too high risk. So you get a lot of land abandonment. You get previously cultivated areas that are abandoned. Now those areas get occupied rapidly by wattles and any aliens that are around. They love the disturbances, so they get moved. So we've
And the
got
tenure regimes for those cultivated lands?
are all sort of leasehold or traditional. So they either long traditional ownership or recent leasehold ownership. They're also seeing these changes. So that gives us, there's some, it's reasonably concrete evidence that there is this trajectory under the communal tenure and traditional arrangements of greater area of occupancy. I mean, and it's obvious, you just see people building houses everywhere and having a little bit of cultivated land.
Isn't there also a policy that has been like developing blocks in the rural areas and putting houses in certain areas, and they're being built by the government? I don't know what that's called. Is like the rural developments.
There were a few of those. There are some of those, like rural villages. What they call them agri-villages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different than that, right? It's not is it part of the IDP?
No. ODP is only applicable in administrative areas where you've got either a town nearby or the municipality is agreeing to build RDP houses in an area. So the area next to Tony Painter's place, those are RDP houses, but it's an agri-village. So they do that. There's a few examples around Mount Fletcher here where they've spread RDP houses out into the communal area.
I've seen them as well.
And there are some.
Really?
There are some, but it's not the major. It's a few, relatively speaking. People do, obviously, but that's still part of the urbanization. So we've got these. I think those. I'm not going to say anymore.
but already mining ikhona mines eyenziwe yabalast
every village.
eyabonwayo
Just stones. Yes.
For assessment.
Minerals.
so zibhalisile minerals ne
umzekelo xa sesigqibile nje begqibile ukuzilista then sizawuya kuzo one by one sijongana nee-issues esinazo ukusetyenziswa kwazo minerals ikhona into esine
Isendeleyo minerals.
ayikho iseyikho no zabona aba baziqhatha inkosi zagwemba umhlaba yazo
zivume zokukosi phambili
Kodwa zilandela. Okay,
problem nge-minerals
sifake
And the poverty, she was retrenching.
ikhomba leyo resource never asingenele kule
masiyeni ke kwiilanda kwi-issues esinazo kusetyenziswa kwezi
sondini
siphambise
eso celebrate ngithi
uzobeka
we are now coming to send
yes.
Le mining certificate nge-resources zethu kufuneke sibe ne-mining certificate.
Minor certificates.
Not into yethu
The one from Grade S. Because you know what is done by the Great South Africa guy.
And you understand what I'm saying? So that platform is already there. A number of provinces have established those provincial extension coordinating forums. We are cascading down now to the districts because we wanted the province to grasp that issue first and have that institution. But we are still having problems with the Eastern Cape. Western Cape is happening, Limpopo is happening. On Monday, what is it today? Monday there was one of those meetings in Kimberley for the Northern Cape.
So it's moving from basically a top-down to a more kind of consultative approach. Co-creative, but you're saying there's still problems with the Eastern Cape. So
We
what,
still have problems with Eastern Cape.
But what are the limitations there then? Is it just the capacity to be able to do it, or?
It's more of an uptake issue, you see.
Right.
We have been having meetings with them. It's more about convincing. You'll find out they're already practicing this in terms of having a commodity approach, in terms of assisting the farmers. But making them to sit down and talk about all these issues is still a problem. But it's more of a personal issue rather than a key problem. It's about the perceptions of the You get what I mean? But once we deal with that, then it will be history. Yeah, but Eastern Cape is the one that is lagging behind as compared to other provinces. But remember, you need not to quote. Sorry for that.
It's all anonymized.
Action group management plan workshop organization. And it strongly came out of the workshop that we do not rely enough on traditional knowledge.
Sure.
And that's something that's key and something that we need to remind ourselves. We can't, and I said a lot of people feel threatened, and communities especially feel threatened when you come and say you're going to do awareness or you're going to do capacity building.
Yeah.
Because they know the area better than us on many times, at many times. So so they say we should actually come with another term instead of awareness, and come and actually learn from communities, learn from farmers, and take that information and use it for policy coordination and policy building and things like that. So I think that's something that we could also learn. So that was something that came out very strongly at that meeting, and it's something I found that we should take home.
So embedding more in traditional knowledge. Yeah, drawing more from that.
But also, I agree with what Dean's saying. There's a lot to be said for the role that civil society can play. I'm saying non-government. Civil societies and traditional healers, NGOs, local government, non-mandated statutory bodies. What role can they play? Because we have felt excluded for so long. It's a very top-down, this is the policy. And if you want to go to a policy workshop, you've got to get to PE for the one for East London. It is not consultative or co-creative in any way. Special invitations, there's lots of barriers, lots of issues. How do we unblock that? And there are a lot of personality issues. I agree with you, Tozamile. How do we swing that around to give people who are in positions of power and who have the mandate, how do we bring them into the fold so that
move it from being more exclusive to inclusive?
Exactly. Yeah. But so that you bring them into that play and they're not feeling excluded and defensive. They've got a lot to offer, but maybe their mechanisms have just been supported by government's top-down approach for too long. So from a civil society perspective, it would be great to hear from government. What role can we play? We don't want to be threatening. We do not have all the answers. We don't even have the mandate. But we are citizens of the country and we want to make a change. How do we contribute to making that change effectively?
That's interesting.
And when I say civil society, I mean in community, NGOs, everybody.
How I wish we had the municipality.
Shame, they did send an appointment, she's here. But they have been part of all our other rangeland workshops, they've been great.
And I think one of the other suggestions was platforms like UCPP, but also sort of community liaison forums and farmers associations and all of that, actually getting them involved and getting their take on certain policies and activities and things.
I mean, if we think about current policies that are relevant to communities, to rangeland systems, I mean, you mentioned Cara. Does that have relevance to people in those communities? Or is it just a way to say that this is what you should be doing? That's what's interesting to me.
Say it again,
what is the practicality of pieces of legislation like Cara? I mean, how does it relate, for example, to commercial farmers versus communal farmers? It's supposed to govern everyone, is that correct?
Yeah, but remember, a policy is simply just a bold statement.
Yeah.
How it's implemented on the ground, it's unique for every environment.
Okay.
So once you move from that basis that a policy is just a bold statement of this is what we want, this is the state of vision that we see as an ideal vision.
Right.
But implementation on the ground is unique.
Okay.
Even in the Eastern Cape, we cannot say this community is operating this way and therefore this is how they should implement the policy.
Sure.
But like for Cara, for example, they have what we call grazing capacity norms.
Yeah.
So, but in order to make those applicable, each farmer needs to do some sort of field assessment to know the actual condition in the farm. So if we move from that idea that a policy is simply just a guideline but not an implementation, it guide implementation but it's not an implementation tool per se. So I want to bring your attention to what Nikki was saying about what can civil society do. For example, if you're sitting here in Matad and I don't know what you're doing and I'm sitting in Pretoria and you're talking about things that addresses communities, specifically from my point of view that deals with livestock management, and you're moving them from this place to this high place, and you don't write a technical brief to let me know, or even a policy brief, something that you think, okay, this is how Cara is, but I think you're missing the point when you come to this, or Cara is silent on this. Yeah. So if you don't write a policy brief, because this is what you should be responsible for, sitting in your own comfort zone as an expert in the field or somebody who is working practically with the communities. So I think moving forward, we definitely need those technical briefs. I should give you an example of what the PLAS at the University of Western Cape is doing.
Oh, PLAS.
They have done a great deal of work in shaping what the land reform policy of this country is at this current stage, because they've been critically analyzing how it's being applied. So if technical experts don't do that, we will sit there and we're still thinking this is the theory. But it doesn't mean that we are sort of ignorant of what is happening. But we need help in shaping our ideas and how to inject and how to inject your knowledge into our policy making landscape.
Okay, that's important. But what's interesting for me from what you said is that there is an attempt to differentially employ that piece of legislation depending on the context. So the way it's differentially employed within communal systems compared to commercial, for example, does it still have value in terms of operationalizing, limiting degradation, or is it still that disconnect because the policy briefs aren't there? Is that what you're saying?
So, that tape. Okay, this is just my thinking. This is not just thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the fact that CARA is under review, it shows that there might have been some limitations that were.
Well, it's an old piece of legislation, isn't it?
Yes,
and it was never really designed for those systems.
So obviously, it advocates other things that are sort of not impossible, but not really appropriate, practically. So there is a need to see how we can take what is happening, because we cannot say therefore CARA is happening and it's old and there's nothing that people at the ground cannot do it, because what is happening at the ground need to shape what goes into the policy. So obviously you are working in the landscape, you know what is better for this landscape. So going forward, that's why I'm saying write those policy briefs, tell the CARA people that section what's so that says this, it's not applicable where we work. Because we work in communal range and management system, and we think this could be a way of going forward. I just want to bring a point forward that we are trying to sort of identify those success factors of how community operates in terms of managing their rangelands. Obviously the work that is happening in Matatiele and in Limpopo is one of those sort of glory work that we are sort of promoting, how we can get communities to work together, establish grazing associations.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, that's where you need to connect with the civil society or with the NGOs and really capture that range of knowledge for these novel practices which are coming forwards, and how you can integrate that into policy.
And I think over the years, although there might have been like a what do you call it? It might have been ignored, but we're starting to see that if you don't have your institutional arrangement at local level right, it doesn't matter what you do.
You're right.
People will still do as they please, and there will not be a collected effort to restore rangelands. And that's the key issue, that the message that we want to promote. But to saying that CARA is irrelevant, it's another thing.
Sorry guys, I might be making myself sound like an idiot here.
But it is functioning through the conservation plans.
So what are the main challenges in that case?
So someone mentioned it earlier, is that if you have one group of village or group of villages that have decided to do this, but an adjacent village hasn't, and all they do is come in and
destroy that.
And then there's conflict. So in an ideal world, you would have just a whole bunch of villages who would all agreed, but that just hardly happens. So there are still changes. Which comes back to the Church Commons.
Wattle. Is wattle part of the conservation agreement as well?
Yeah, they often are, where they are present. But it's not every community. So every conservation agreement would be negotiated. It would be partially guided by because there would be an agenda, but then it would be in consultation with that community what their priorities are. And so if wattle clearing was if there's wattle there, generally people won't get rid of it, and it becomes part of the conservation agreement. And that might even be a voluntary thing. If they clear the aliens, then the NGO would come in and help with auctions, animal and vaccinations. Training of herders so that they can move the animals around. The conservation agreements, it varies. It's not a recipe, but it's an attempt to land management.
download and I sit about it must buy. But then I go to Ukasha Oba, must buy.
Yes.
umasipala xa kwenza idami ulenza edwenzela eso sizwe akenzeli yena ngonxa izawujika ngokubela idami likamasipala endaweni yethu
wenzela abo bantu shekazi
so nxa seliphuma ngokuphuma amanzi aye kwenye indawo kwekufuza bangelita akho nto esiyifumanayo
ngabantu kaloku naba yawenzela abantu.
Okay, masibe siqhubeke.
Kodwa
Sine 30 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, leni kwento le yafuneka. Le abantu.
Then the local municipality, the LGT office, then you have, then they present something like this, you take all those ideas.
Yesibili indaba yamanzi ngaphandle kwengxaki enijongana nazo ngumasipala ngokokwenu kwena nicaza eziphi challenges eninazo emilanjeni yenu emithonjeni yenu
awabiyelwanga inkomo zethu
inkomo ziyapha laphana kuma-spring water
awabiyelwanga
sometimes in the winter sibhayitha amaphela kwezinyanga
nalapha epurifier khona eyaphinda amanayisi
ifake nje kwi-brackets bephakathi nendawo yenze wazi endawo zingabiyelwanga
kunale ndawo apha epurifier khona but still aphume imdaka ezitepini andazi yintoni ngakhe amnyama andazi nje ndazenze kantoni enye challenge le nto basiya amanzi amdaka kodwa ikhona
poor maintenance.
Poor maintenance.
Poor maintenance.
He's a man who's in the project. He has
Nasiya kakhulukazi phaya emilanjeni napha emithonjeni
siyawangcolisa la manzi uthawula amanzi apha lapha phakathi
mama nezinto kuthiwa
Azibhali pampas eSouth Africa. Yelo manaphi. Ihamba namanzi.
Awareness uyafuna ukwenziwa.
Ufika pha kuyo i-water pollution le uzicacise khona iziba uthetha ukuthini zinto
Pampas.
Hey. Like abantu balahlela ungamuntu udoti emlanjeni
Ayizopampas zolotha ntoni ama-nappies. Kodwa khona umuntu ongayazi pampas. Kaloku ayopampas yodwa mhlekazi khona i-Huggies khona ntoni khona ne-pampas ngamagama abo ungabhala Huggies bazazi uba you mean pampas.
i-plastic checkers baya kwa-box
igama le-checkers livela
kwa-checkers neyakwa-box angosithi checkers
into yi-checkers
Amavele sithi plastic.
yes and nani bodata nibathanda ukubona abantu abangodata mna umuntu imoto phakathi nomlambo mhlawumbe imoto umuntu kuyaselwa ngabanye abantu bezanzi inayo yonke into